Hi there. So I am down in the basement. Hopefully you can hear me because the baby is sleeping upstairs. Okay, so she's like a toddler, but I still call her the baby. I'm working on my chair and I'm all set up with my new pneumatic stapler. Got my husband to give me some training on the air compressor and stuff. So I am just about to get started on the front of the back side. Now the other day I did do the very back of the chair. As you can see here, I just used my little spring-loaded staple gun because the kids were sleeping and I didn't want to have all the noise of the air compressor and stuff. So I did get that done. That was the first step, was to put the outside back on. Now I'm going to do the inside back. So I did save the foam from the original chair. It's fine, I'm going to reuse it. And I'm going to cut some batting. I have this humongous thing. It's just quilt batting. I'm going to cut some of that to go over it, and I'm going to cut my fabric to go over the back. Now, this is obviously going to be the biggest, most noticeable piece of fabric on the chair. So I'm going to be very intentional about how I cut it, which part I cut it out of the fabric. So I am going to choose which little scene out of my toile that I want to be featured. So I need to decide which part I want. So the back of the chair is going to be roughly a 28 by 28 inch plot. So let's see, I'm thinking, I just need to pick out what my favorite scene is and put it right in the middle. I'm kind of thinking that this one right here is the biggest scene. I really don't want to put like a ton of little scenes because I think it'll make a bigger impact if it's just like one big one in the middle, if you know what I mean. So I think I'm gonna go for that. Now I bought plenty of fabric, so I do have a little wiggle room. I can just choose which parts I want to use and not. If you bought like exactly enough fabric, you might not have the option of like, you know, having extra scrap left over. Now, if you do have a lot of scrap material left over and you have some larger pieces, you can make a throw pillow, or you could add it into a quilt or anything like that. So, or you could even like cut it into strips and use it for a project. All right, so I'm gonna cut out my back piece. When you're cutting out your pieces, you don't need perfectly straight lines, but you do want to measure to be sure that you're not like going down in an angle and your piece is getting smaller and then it's not going to cover. So to do this, I'm plotting it out with a measuring tape, but I'm also using this quilting straight edge from the edge of my table just to make sure I'm getting a nice straight line. Also, for cutting fabric, you really need some good fabric scissors, some good upholstery shears. I love my Ginger scissors. I got these as a Christmas present a few years ago, and they are heavy, they are sharp and precise, and I totally recommend these. They're not that expensive. You can check them out in my Amazon storefront if you're interested, but I use these for all my sewing and upholstery projects. So I got my edges cut. You can see my edges are not like perfectly straight, but I'm not too concerned about that because you're going to be trimming off any excess anyway. So I have my main seam right in the middle there, and now I'm going to put it on the back of the chair with a layer of batting underneath it. As an aside, what would be even more awesome for cutting fabric is if you had a cutting mat with one of those fabric cutting wheels, like for quilting, but I don't have one of those, so I just use scissors and a measuring tape. Okay, so I've laid the batting over the fabric over the batting, and I've laid it on the back of the chair to position it. Now, the foam on the back of the chair is helping it not slide around. I did tack the foam down with just one staple at the top so it wouldn't go sliding around. So I tacked that on with just one staple to anchor it at the top. Now I'm going to make sure it's all straight, laid out how I want, and I'm going to go around and staple. And this pneumatic staple gun is amazing. I'm going to link it in my Amazon storefront because it is so much better than the spring-loaded little thing that always jams and I always have to take stuff out. This is just like, poof. It's good. going on the back, and I trimmed the excess around the edges. Now you'll see some like batting fluffy stuff sticking up. I'm not going to worry about that right now. When we go to do the piping later, I'll trim up anything else that needs to be trimmed, and I'll stuff that down in there with a little small wedge, and then we'll glue the piping in later. So right now it's a little fluffy around the edges, but don't worry, we'll take care of that later. I wanted to give you a better idea of how it looks as I'm going. So you can see that I laid out the fabric on the arm, and I am feeling for this, the groove down in there. Not this one, there's one underneath it. I'm feeling for the groove, and I'm stapling down into the groove, so I have all this excess sticking up, and over here too, but I'm following the groove as I go, and all that will get trimmed off. And I found it helpful to start at the top and work my way down the side, and I have not stapled anything on the bottom yet, but I tucked it down underneath where it's gonna go, which helps give me an idea of how to smooth it out and stuff as I go. So I want to show you something when you're doing an arm, how you can get it to go around like the edge of the chair. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So the fabric goes through the chair right here and through under the arm right here. So this part's not a problem, this comes out, but then what do you do when you get to this corner? Well, you just cut a line straight up the fabric right here where it meets this part, but don't go too far up. Only go far enough up that where the fabric splits, so right up in this corner here. So then this part can come down, and this part up here, let's see if I can come through here. Like that. So you can see where I cut it. So this part can come out up here, this part can come through down here. I hope that makes sense. Seriously a dream. Like, here, let me just show you. So it fits perfectly in my little 1/4 inch groove, and beautiful. Okay, so I just finished doing the inside of both arms. I'm going to show you real quick. Okay, there we have the inside of both arms done, and now we are going to work on the seat. Giant thing of foam that I got in the mail, and this is outrageously heavy. Like, it is so dense and tightly rolled up. It's just incredible. My son sees my husband use the foam roller a lot, and so when he saw this, he put it down on the ground and started foam rolling. It was really, really funny. Okay, so what I'm going to do to make the foam pad for the seat is I just taped together a bunch of newspaper to make a giant piece of paper, and then I am going to make a pattern by resting that in the chair and tracing it, and that will give me a pattern for cutting my foam. And a word of advice, don't use your fabric scissors for paper because it will dull them. So use regular paper scissors for paper. Don't use your fabric scissors. This thing is so thick and like squishy and dense. It seriously feels like I was unrolling a bed. So anyway, I laid out my pattern, and as you can see, it is a little bit deeper than the depth of my foam, but that's okay. We have a plan. So I'm lining it up so that the front edge will come along this edge and it comes to the corner. You can see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to cut another strip to go along the back because you really won't notice it in the back as much as you would in the front. And then I have some spray adhesive, and I will glue them together, and then the whole thing will get wrapped in batting and you'll never even know. So what I'm going to do now is I laid out my pattern. I'm going to trace it onto the foam. You're not going to see the foam, so don't worry about drawing on it. You'll never see it. So most people use an electric bread knife to cut upholstery foam, but I don't have an electric bread knife, nor am I going to go out and buy one just for this. So I am actually using a normal bread knife, and it's working. It's working just fine. So let me show you how I'm doing it. cutting, I'm actually holding the foam up, but you just want to go in and just gently like drag it this way as you go through the foam, and then just follow your line, dragging it that way. And you don't want to try to saw back and forth. It's not going to work very well. So just gently keep dragging it this way down your line. Here is my cut foam, and I have cut another 2-inch strip and put it over back here. I just made a line where I need to cut that one, and I am gonna glue it on. I just used this spray adhesive by 3M. I've linked it in my Amazon storefront if you're interested, but it worked super well. I just sprayed it on the underside of this extra piece, waited a few seconds, and then just adhered it to the top of this, and it is stuck. So make sure you follow the instructions on the can though, because you don't want to breathe it in, and you need to wait until it is aggressively tacky and not like super wet or super dry. So anyway, that is like on there. And I did put the cut side down against this bottom piece because I want a smooth side on the back of my cushion. So I am test fitting my cushion. I have it pushed all the way against the back, and I think that I want to ease this edge a little bit. So you can see my bread knife technique was not super clean, but it will be covered with batting, so you won't really see that. But I think I'm going to take some upholstery scissors and just go along here to just smooth down this edge a little bit so it's not quite so sharp. So for the very base of the seat, it first gets covered with a layer of fabric, and then the cushion sits on top of that, because the bottom layer of fabric is what goes down against the show wood. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Down into this groove, and that's what you see at the bottom. And then the cushion gets covered with fabric and sits on top of that. So this is kind of a big expanse to fill with such expensive fabric that you're never going to see. I don't know if you remember on the original chair, but it did not have the patterned fabric over the entire base of the seat. They had just like plain old, sorry, I'm blanking, it's getting late, plain old like duck cloth in a solid color. So actually what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna use a white twin sheet from Walmart and cut some fabric out of that and use that as the base of my seat up to a certain point, at which I will transition to the nice fabric and go down to the show wood with that. So you'll hopefully see what I mean in just a minute. So tonight I am going to work on the base cover for the seat. So this is the part that goes over the cover that goes over the springs. So it's like the fabric. It's just the fabric that is on the bottom of the seat before you put on the cushion. So here's the strip I cut right there, and that is gonna go on the front of the chair because you're gonna see that strip along the front and sides. And then I am just gonna sew it to this sheet, and that will be the bottom of the chair base. So I actually got a new sewing machine for Christmas because my old one was broken and it was never that great a quality. I got it when I was 8 as like a cheap learning sort of machine, and it kept breaking over the years, and it finally just like bit the dust. I never bothered to replace it. So anytime I had to do like curtains or anything like that, I would borrow my mom's really nice sewing machine. So for Christmas, my parents got me a sewing machine. I didn't ask for one, but they got me one. So if you know me, you know I don't particularly like sewing, but it is a necessary evil for doing projects that I like, and I like the outcome. So I am just now setting up and figuring out my new sewing machine that I got for Christmas. That shows you how much sewing I do. Okay, so I have my fabric laid out, and what my mama taught me when she was trying to teach me how to sew is you put the right sides of the fabric together, and then I'm going to pin it along here. and I am choosing to use the hemmed, like the nice edge of the twin sheet, because I think it will give it a nice strong, a nice finished look is what I'm trying to say. Sorry, it's like 11 o'clock at night. I'm trying to whisper so I don't wake anybody up. Okay, so I put pins every few inches, and I'm just going to sew a straight line straight down that way. So I just want to be clear real quick. You know, I'm not a professional. I do make mistakes. Even professionals make mistakes, but I do make mistakes. So I should not have stapled the bottom sides of the arms yet, like the inside arms, and let me show you why. Stapled the fabric down here for the arms, but I should not have done that yet because I need to be able to get the seat cover through and staple it down there. So I took out the staples on both sides so I can get this in. I laid down a piece of padding just where the show fabric is going to be, and then I cut slots right here and right here, and then tucked this part through and that part through. So it's just kind of hanging like this right now. And now I'm going to put on the fabric that I just sewed. Okay, so I've laid this out on my chair. Looks like a mess right now. But, okay, I just got this part nice and straight. I'm just smoothing it down. And I'm just going to staple it right in the middle in this groove. You can see there's that groove all in the front. There's the batting underneath. I'm just going to find the middle and staple it, and then I'm going to work my way across so it's nice and smooth, and then I'll go the other way, nice and smooth, and then I will go from there. Until I get to the corners. And then what I'm going to do on the sides, you can see this is going to be tucked down in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply just going to this is really hard to do one-handed. I'm simply going to go like this and then like fold it over to make a seam. Let me set down the phone, get it arranged, and then I can show you. And as I've just taken this part around this way and then brought this part straight down. Again, this is hard to do one-handed. To make like a seam, and then I'm going to staple it in the groove down here. Here that the groove stops here and the show wood is here. So we are going to need to cut a slit right here so that we can attach this part and then have the rest of the face come around down through this hole where the groove starts up again. Alright, so I cut my slit straight up just until it gets to this part. And then I'm just going to staple this in the groove, and then some piping will go over that. See, I stapled it in here in the groove. I trimmed it up just a little bit. I'll trim it further later. And then piping will go over this part. Now we have this part tucked in. So we have excess fabric here because obviously there's a section of chair here that this can't go through. So we're going to have to trim it along here just until it gets to here so that this part can come through. So basically we're just going to trim out like a little section to make room for this. You just get to see a whole series of outfits in this tutorial because each time you catch me with a different outfit, it's a different day. Simply because I work on this little bits here and there, generally after the kids are in bed and the kitchen is clean. So usually starting at around 8:30 at night. Anyway, gotta love old college choir shirts from Choir Tour. Anyway, I finished the the base cover of the seat, and I'm going to show you what I did. But like I said, I'm not a pro, and I made a big boo-boo, but I fixed it. So let me show you. Base here, and again, this was just an old, not old, it was new, but just a plain white bed sheet from Walmart that I sewed this fabric to, because once the cushion is on, the cushion is going to come like all the way to here, so you're not even going to like see that part. But we needed this piece because it shows in the front and right here. So anyway, I sewed that together like I said last time, and I stapled all along the front, the edges, all that. Got this all done. Trimmed it as closely as I could, and the piping's gonna go along there. So let me show you the boo-boo I had. The boo-boo was the very first step I did. When I did the back of that, I didn't carry it underneath this piece of wood all the way down. I stopped it right there. So then we had this huge gap down here, which is a problem. So thankfully, what I was able to do was the inside of this cushion was not attached at the bottom yet. So I just lifted it up on the other side and stapled this fabric from the underside all along here, and then just pulled it down and stapled it along here. So that is actually a separate piece of fabric than that, but you know, it's okay. I think it works. All right, so now what I have left to do is to put the outside of the arms on, which I'm gonna do next, and then the tops of the arms. And then after that, I think we'll have all of the base upholstery done. And we'll need to make our piping after that, hot glue it on. I have to get my hot glue gun back from my brother because he borrowed it. It's really sweet though. He borrowed it to make something for his fiance, now wife, and it was sweet, so I don't mind loaning it to him, but I need it back. Anyway, okay, so yeah, piping after that, and we will need to make a cover for our cushion. But I'm gonna save that for last because I like to procrastinate on sewing as long as possible. So yeah, now we're gonna do the outside of the arms.